Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to have Dr. Punani as your chair, because really his knowledge of law and his knowledge of the disability sector is stupendous. It's like huge, massive, and yes, we've worked together a long time, but in the PhD course that he mentioned, it wasn't me who was the success factor, it was the government of Tamil Nadu. And there are people here from Tamil Nadu who will tell you that the kind of NGO support you get in the state of Tamil Nadu और कहीं नहीं होता है. बहुत ही बढ़िया है. It's excellent support. Anything you ask for, they'll say just write it down and give it to us. You don't even have to waste time telling us. So that kind of support is phenomenal. So my topic today is disability and gender. Women with disability, their dual challenges. I mean, they kept changing the topic, but it also has role of legislature. So I'm going to be talking human rights and rights of women with disability as well. So in this presentation, I will talk about the issues of women, then the issues of women with disabilities in India, and the discrimination, equality, legal capacity, and reasonable accommodation. And then I'll talk about all forms of violence and reproductive rights, legal protection and procedural safeguards. These are very boring topics in terms of understanding the law and interpreting it and then having it implemented. But these are things we need to know, and most of us don't bother to know. But until we know what rights are there, safeguards are there, then we cannot fully help the people that we work with. It's one part of us that remains a blank. Ho jayega, ho jayega. Yes, services are very important, but knowing your rights and knowing their rights will help you provide services better. So right at the end, I will do rule of legislation. So in the disability and gender field, the two are inextricably linked. In terms of 1 in 5 women having a disability, and sometimes this disability is caused because of lack of access to health care, etc. That's sad. So the disadvantages are more than cumulative. ऐसा नहीं है कि 1 + 1 you get 2. You get something else actually, and I'll come back to that. So women with disabilities are less likely to be literate, to have had care in early childhood, to have been employed or used the internet. The sad part is, Hindi में कहते हैं ना घर का ना घाट का. Women with disabilities are not welcome really in women's narrative. They're not welcome either, not always, in disabled men's narratives. So they get left out on both sides. So the feminine movement, actually it was only in the 4th wave that Kimberly Crenshaw brought in the perspective of women with disabilities. So how does that impact? Impact is, because they are not there, their issues become invisible. Their issues don't get recognized, identified, or implemented in any way. So it perpetuates their lack of access, their lack of being even heard what their needs are. So both in international and national level policies, we don't hear a lot about women with disabilities and their intersecting forms of discrimination. And this is something that has come from the UN itself. As I said before, Kimberly Crenshaw was the first one who brought in intersectionality in the women's literature, women's narrative, to include women with disabilities. What is the problem then? The problem is largely access. Access to services, access to health care, access to policies, access to legislation, access being denied everywhere. Completely faced with multiple barriers, which includes ineffective policies, ineffective legislation. Not so much ineffective as not being implemented with the perspective of the woman with disability. Yes, by and large, organizations for disabled people, by them, they tend to talk about the men's agenda. The men set the agenda. And women get unheard, unseen, and perpetually left out of any discussion that benefits men with disabilities. So also they get left out because of wash facilities. They don't get taken for health care, especially reproductive rights. They don't get looked at. They're exploited, etc. And I'll come back to that one again. The most difficult part is, and all of you have seen this, all of you face this, that children and women with disabilities get perpetually infantilized. We think of them as infants. Aaj bhi, I know children will say about a 12-year-old person with disability, oh, you know that CP baby? Arey baby nahi hai bhai. Don't make them infants, they're grown up, treat them as adults. So this is what I was talking about, intersectionality. So when you mix blue with green, you don't get dark blue, you don't get dark green, you get yellow. It's a whole new paradigm. And that's something that's just recently recognized in the disability narrative, intersectionality. Okay? Women and men enjoy the same rights as equally, women and children enjoy the same rights equally as men with disabilities. That's Section 4 of the RPWD Act. Now, RPWD Act does mention positive images, breaking of stereotypes, etc., but mentions only one gender, and that's women. No other gender is mentioned, caste is not mentioned. So intersectionality in the RPD Act just stops with disability and women. But there are other forums. And this discrimination begins at birth. You see that first photograph of a mother with twins. And the little boy was better fed, grew up better. The young girl was deprived of adequate nutrition. And you can see the difference between them. Yes? Can you see the difference? And on this side is a woman in a rural area who has a child with disability, a girl child. But when the cow gives milk, she doesn't feed her daughter with the milk. She feeds the calves because she doesn't believe that there is any future for that girl with disability. So disability intersectionalities are largely gender, caste, and minority type of impairment. And that's important because people with physical disability, people with visual impairment, they fare better in the education system, in employment, in any rights forum. It's those with intellectual disability and mental health issues, including intellectual disabilities. I will include autism because that's what our RPD Act says. I don't agree with it, but it's there. So they get left out and not included or discriminated against, especially sexual abuse. And also the socioeconomic status of the person is important. The urban-rural divide is there. Age is important. So these are the intersectionalities with disability. And I will look at this side. We'll say all forms of violence, denied access to justice systems, and denied understanding of legal capacity, more than men, and more than women without disability. So all forms of abuse, they're not only afraid of redressal mechanisms, that I can go there and get some redressal, some justice. They're unaware and they're fearsome, and they're afraid that their family members would not like it. So they're like a hidden Almirah in the house. People open it, use it, put it back, and they just stay where they are. So, and even when they're taken for healthcare facilities, they're not private. They don't go alone. People go with them. They're not able to express themselves fully or clearly. So there is this overarching subjugation, much more with women with disability than men with disability. There's also all forms of exploitation. The reproductive rights have been very nicely dispensed with in our country. There are many, many women who are abused sexually in their families, by their families, continuously. And no reprieve. If she gets pregnant, they will use all kinds of homemade methods to terminate her pregnancy. And over again this happens. Her health goes down. She can't do anything. She can't live as she used to earlier. Then she gets thrown out of the house. And if she's lucky, she will get into an institution where she will be abused again. You agree? You agree? That is the situation in India. So what are the additional challenges that women with disabilities have in addition to what women without disabilities have? So we all know, I mean, not people in this room, but women in our country enjoy a lower rank in life. There are pervasive societal attitudes regarding ableism, there's sexual threats, socioeconomic discrimination, reduced access to healthcare, no access to redressal strategies, and social security. In addition to this, for women with disabilities will get increased abuse in institutions, much more than a separate institution for women without disabilities. There is abuse there also, but it's much, much more for women with disabilities who cannot voice what her needs are or where. And we do know that there are a lot of girls with intellectual disability who do not even know that this is wrong. What is being done to her is not right, and that she should complain, and that she will get redressal if she complains, or if she is able to complain to the right authority. So it's like a vicious cycle. There's also forced sterilization, institutionalization without her consent, medical procedures done on her for someone to write a PhD paper. That happens so often. No one asks her, no one tells her, and no one tells her in ways that she can understand. And just because someone wants data to collect, and someone feels that we cannot go on having these multiple pregnancies, so let's make her something that infertile. So they're shunned by families, especially if they have mental illness, and by the communities as well. So these are some of the issues that women with disabilities have, in addition to what women without disabilities have, and in addition to what men with disabilities have. I understand that even men with disabilities have some level of sexual abuse, but I'm more concerned in this presentation with the women. Now, Human Rights Watch did a wonderful seminal study with 250 institutions for mental health. And they found that most of the women who were forcibly in the mental health institutions didn't come there without with their consent. And they don't know the addresses of their families. They don't know their parents' full names or the village that they lived in or where they came from. They just know that they are there, and that is their future life. So they say that 1.5 million people 0.1% of the population are with intellectual disabilities, and a mere 7,22826 people with psychosocial disability. And they're considered to be unmarriageable, unemployable, and unintelligent. In fact, we know this for a fact, that a general public may, when you see a person with disability, your first thought is one of incompetence. You assume that that person has zero competence, the public, not you. So this assumption of incompetence is the most debilitating attitude that they face. शुरू से पहले ये सोच लो इससे कुछ नहीं होगा, and then move on from there, which is sad. So Article 23(1)(c) of the UNCRPD talks about their rights. And in this study that Human Rights Watch did, they found that there were, in one very well-known mental health residential facility, where there were 1,850 patients, there were only 100 toilets, of which only 25 were working. 1,850 persons for 25 toilets. This is the level of neglect, total indignity. Well, Dr. Punani mentioned that I was part of the UNCRPD discussions, and there was this lady with psychosocial difficulties who was also a lawyer. She said that, you know, when my parents, they force her, and her sisters also, because otherwise she would claim property rights. So they force her to be institutionalized, and the first thing they ask you in the kitchen is, will you have toffee? So what the dickens is toffee? Toffee is tea and coffee mixed. You take it or you don't. Would you drink toffee? Would you? So this is the level of consciousness of people about their needs, their dignity. So the rights under the Constitution of India is very, very clear to us. I'm coming now to the legislative measures that are there, and we need to know how to access them. You are service providers, you are teachers, you're psychologists, you're therapists, you run institutions. You need to know that, ye hai, it is there. These are their rights. How to achieve them is something I'll talk about in the next few slides. So the fundamental, as I said earlier, all rights, fundamental freedoms, all human rights are available for women with disabilities, and there are mechanisms in which they are to be addressed to be able to get your redress. Now, why do I show Justice Chandrachud's picture here? He adopted 2 girls with disabilities, and his judgments have been very, very pro-disability. Some very interesting judgments, including October 2021 interim order on education for persons with special needs, both in the special school sector and in the mainstream sector. And he's done lots more. And these Article 14 and 15, 21A, of course, is education. And also the fundamental rights with 32 and 226, you access the High Court or you access the Supreme Court only on violation of fundamental rights. So within the directive principles of state policy, the state should be looking at equal justice in terms of resources that they have, but they don't. And even when it comes to protection of weaker sections, which is the state's duty, there is very little done for. I know in my own state, there isn't a lot being done. And somebody mentioned Maharashtra in the morning, where the rules are not mentioned. I mean, these are deplorable. Why don't you guys fight for it? Even in Bengal, where we have a strong leader, a woman, it took us a little bit, but we finally did get the rules notified, and then unless you get the rules notified, nothing happens. they run away from it. So what are the range of legal options for redressal? First is under the fundamental rights, as I mentioned, in the Constitution, then public interest litigation and some very, very interesting public interest PILs, which has to be in the interest of the public, not individual. So they have brought about huge results, and I don't have the time to discuss them, but we can do it later. And the CRPC, of course, has been modified and called Bharatiya Shiksha Adhiniyam and Shakhi Witness, 1973, and even the IPC has been modified. But today I'll talk about the RPWD and the UNCRPD and the Mental Health Act. Many of us don't look at Mental Health Act. So we need to understand that mental health issues are also under the PD Act. We need to look at them also. And the POXO Act, POSH, all of these have been, they're looking at it differently. There was this girl with blindness in Maharashtra who was raped by her brother's friends. So she knew them well. She knew their voice very well. But they say in rape cases, you have to visually identify the rapist. Now this girl was blind, kaise karegi? So initially, things didn't go her way, but finally the judge realized that we have to amend these rules and look at it from the prism of reasonable accommodation and special needs, and then that man was given a life sentence. I think her brother should have also got a life sentence. Hana? Right. Okay. So these are all the sections under the RPWD Act, both for State Commissioner and Chief Commissioner. It's such a simple method of writing to them by email. You don't have to be present. You don't have to fill up too many forms. You need to apply to them and say, this is my problem, and these are my documents, please take action. And they've done some wonderful judgments. Mr. Dharyal was here this morning. I wish they would tell you. My point here is with reasonable accommodations, and that's a very, very significant part of being a woman with disability. She has special needs which needs to be accommodated, because we're looking at equity, not equality. What is equality? Giving everybody the same thing. Equity is giving them what they need in order to succeed. So equity and reasonable accommodation is mentioned RPWD Act 5 times. 5 times, including education, etc. So this is in discrimination, which is what women with disabilities face the most. The definition of discrimination, which came from CEDAW and then to UNCRPD and then to RPWD Act, the best definitions, and equality, non-discrimination, legal capacity, combating of stereotypes. We get so used to this, arey, wo to disabled hai, she can't do anything. And so many women have done wonderfully well just by believing in them, as we heard all day. Incidentally, Dr. Punani, do you know why this girl Elena was so brilliant? Because she's a Bengali. Sorry about that. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. And legal protection, and please understand that violence is not just hitting people. Violence and abuse, if you damage their assistive devices, if you take away their medical treatment, all of these are different forms of violence, and women with disabilities face the maximum amount of violence and abuse and discrimination in our country and many, many other Asia-Pacific countries. I've mentioned this before, so I don't want to go through it again. The reproductive rights, there was this girl in Chandigarh with ID in an institution who became pregnant. She didn't know, she didn't tell anybody that she was missing her periods. And by the time it was found out that she's pregnant, it was too late to do surgery. And the court even then wanted to safeguard her, because she didn't understand actually what or why her stomach was getting so big and why the fuss about this, kya hua hai. But only when the National Trust agreed to take care of her and her baby in the future that the judge allowed. And of course, when the baby was born, she didn't know what to do with it. She was not happy with it. But Sari institution mein that baby became the most important person. Everybody adopted her. So there are many penal provisions. Dr. Punani has asked me to finish in 20 minutes, so I need to wrap up quickly. And I'll tell you what the role of legislature is, because Dr. Bhan had asked me to do so. Now, legislature cannot provide schemes, cannot make plans and projects and programs. They can only direct the governments to do so, as they have done it many times. Recently, there was a writ petition by an organization in Mumbai called Saumya about right to employment of people with autism. And the Supreme Court jumped at it, took action, and directed all state governments to take action, give them a list, and what they're doing for the next 2-3 years. So they can, but what they can do is train their staff, judicial staff, provide audiovisual in the courtrooms where possible, because girls with disabilities are exempted from appearing in court. So their testimony is recorded in a place of their choice. These are procedural safeguards that are there. You don't have to drag her to court. She doesn't have to give evidence over and over and over again. Bas, ek baar uska, jahan she is comfortable, take it there and let her present her case. And I'm going to end here, second last slide, that these legislations have included in varying degrees, and that's the Mental Health Act, which actually says give free medicine to BPL families, break stereotypes of mentally ill people, promote positive images of women with disabilities, and treat people with mental illness in the same way that you would treat others with physical difficulties. So we have a lot to do, and I hope that you will become more sensitive to the needs of women with disabilities and the intersections, blue and green and yellow. Please remember that. And these are some of the women who've broken all barriers and reached the top of their professions. And this side, there are 2 IAS girls. One is blind. She was the first blind woman with autism. And this is Ira Singhal, who is about 4 feet high. She came first in the UPSC exams. And this girl, Disha, from Bhushan's state, that he had first shared this with me, a Down syndrome girl who passed her BCom. And Anjali, who's a wheelchair user, does fabulous work in access auditing. And then there is Jija Ghosh, who took the legislative route. They threw her out of a flight because she had cerebral palsy. Okay? She took the airlines to court. She won her case, but she didn't berate them. She went and trained all the airport staff on how to deal with disability. So, but even then, when someone wanted to marry her, she said, "Nahi, mujhe shaadi karke kya karoge?" Didn't encourage that. But he forced her, they got married. Then they went to adopt a child. And that adoption committee head, who was a psychologist, she said, "No, you will not get powers to admit this take this child, because you will strangle her to death." This is the condition of women with disabilities in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aloka ji. As planned, you have time for a few questions. Any burning question, you're welcome. Because if I start speaking, you will not get the time, so I'll restrain myself to give you time. So first question, anybody? No, in fact, by the time you are thinking of the question, Aloka ji touched upon 2 very important issues: reasonable accommodation and legal capacity. Akhil is there. Both of us were member of the law drafting committee. Can you believe this one word, reasonable accommodation, took 7 days of discussion of committee of 32 people to take it in Indian law or not to take it. It's an American term. With lot of hard work, lot of lobbying, lot of advocacy, finally we succeeded. The reasonable accommodation has to be part of the Indian law, and it became the most important part. Aloka ji, when it came to legal capacity, our old law says that people with ID have no legal capacity. They cannot sign the documents. They cannot sign any property paper. They cannot sign the check. Lot of discussion, lot of fight. No, they have the capacity. It's only the extent of capacity. You cannot say they don't have the legal capacity. They do have. But there's an extent of capacity. This is the first time that we reverse the National Trust Act's definition of legal capacity, and we went, no, they have the legal capacity, but they have the right to take help if they want to take the help in case of signing of documents. That's from where the Guardianship Act got modified. Of course, there's a conflict between National Trust Act and the Guardianship Act. There are a lot of opinion. We're not going to that. So if you have any question to this singam of our rehab sector, you're most welcome. And Aloka ji, I have a question to you. You are in the wrong profession all your life. You should have been a lawyer. You should have been a lawyer. The way she was talking, all the remedies and all the things, only a lawyer can talk like that. We would have made a very good lawyer for this country because we see the power of the law. I'll give you a small example. The recently Supreme Court has passed the law, and all S&DT, be it special education, please remember your future is bright. Because as per the Supreme Court order, which is being implemented at a slow pace, every school in this country, a regular school in this country, should have minimum 2 special educators. You know, only the state of Gujarat needs 16,000 special educators. The country needs 100,000 special educators. This is the law, power of the law. And second thing, recently the new judgment has come in Gujarat. Take advantage of that. That special educator should also be paid the same salary as a regular teacher is paid. Our government of Gujarat has to shell out 200 crores as areas of payment to the special educators. Now, every special educator under IDSS in Gujarat, please remember that, you can sometime do advocacy, gets salary as per the 7th Pay Commission, gets the pension, gets the gratuity, gets the leave encashment, gets all the benefits available to a government employee. This is the power of the law, and this is the power of Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, National Trust Act. So still, if you think of any question, you're welcome.
Actually, women with disabilities was not a part of the ICEVI Act. It's when the Standing Committee on Ministry of MSG, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment met, they wanted very many more much more protection for women with disabilities. As far as reasonable accommodation is concerned, it's slowly being incorporated. They've extended their understanding of discrimination, the Supreme Court, and they've said that if you don't give reasonable accommodation, then that is discrimination. So it's very important. Anything that you do, even this conference, is reasonable accommodation. When you provide a special educator, it's reasonable accommodation. When you do UDL, it's reasonable accommodation. Anything that the child needs in order to succeed, it makes the playing field level. And that's some, we fought, Bhushan will support me in this, and everybody, Mittalji is here, Vijay, Akhil, we fought and fought for years for equality. And then we realized, ki nahi, kafi nahi hai bhai. We need equity much more than we need equality. That is the... and also reasonable accommodation. Kerala mein, recently there was this guy who was writing his master's exams, and just a person with disability. And just before his exams, he fell very ill. And he couldn't go to the examination center. So he asked the court to send him the invigilator to his house. Now, obviously, initially they said no. Then he told them, this is part of my reasonable accommodation. The court understood that, read that, and they gave him an invigilator at home. He passed his exams with 75% marks in masters. So use this concept of reasonable accommodation to influence your boss, to influence your colleagues, to influence parents, and to influence the government.
Also the politicians.
Definitely. Yeah.
One thing, sorry, please go ahead. Can you use the mic? Because Gujarat teachers went to the High Court and fought the case very strongly. Yes, we were part of that team. And just to, Maharashtra should go to the court.
You don't even have,
Who stops you from going
rules.
to the court? You need the courage to go to, and I'll tell you the second part of the story. The Gujarat government, you can quote me, I'm telling you something very official. Government of Gujarat went to the Supreme Court. No. We appointed them on contract basis. Now you cannot ask them to pay them regular salaries. So this is against the Gujarat state policy. Supreme Court said there is an error in this judgment of the High Court. High Court has done a grave mistake in giving the judgment. The arrears should not be paid from 21st May 2013. They should be paid from the date of appointment of the teacher, which would have been 10 times the area. The Gujarat government got scared, said, sir, you admit the matter and leave it here. We will not pursue this matter anymore. That's the power of law. Just to answer your question, every state government, every state is bound by the High Court. The whole country is bound by the Supreme Court. Unless the judgment is of Supreme Court, other states are not benefited. So to take the benefit, you have to go to the state, your own state High Court. And if the Maharashtra, Bombay High Court is a very outstanding court. With Justice Mohit Shah, when he was there, he gave many judgments. Even now, Bombay High Court is known to be a very proactive court. You must go. If Gujarat can get the salary, why not everybody? I keep telling in every session, but I'm a poor guy whose voice is never heard. Anyway, yes, sir, DP. Yeah, can you take the mic so everybody can hear? Any volunteer? Yes. Oh, sorry, ma'am.
Sir, we heard in the earlier session and now you also said that rules have to be made. So who is supposed to make the rules and who needs to take the initiative to make those rules?
Okay.
So what can we NGOs do?
You have to go to the court because as per the law, within 3 months of the enactment of the law, which was 2016, December, the rules should have been framed by 2017 April. I am very honored to tell you, Gujarat was the first state to adopt the rules within 6 months, but poor state waited for 1 year because central government had not adopted it. And the state government cannot. So we approached the Chief Minister. We said, sir, this is the mandate by this parliament of this country. The president has signed the law. So we have to enact the rule. They enacted. Only thing is, to answer your question, Aloka ji can also answer, is the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment, which has to draft the rules. And it's very easy. They don't have to draft. They have to take the center rules, just make it Marathi. Translate into Marathi and add some very specific things of Maharashtra and put it before the law department, get their concurrence, and then pass it in the assembly. That's all. It's a very simple procedure. It can be done in 15 days' time. But only thing is, there's a lack of political will, a lack of advocacy. We are weak. We don't rise to the occasion. We don't go to the people and tell them, look, you are bound by that. We gave you the law. We brought you the best law in this world today, ROPWD. But rules must be made as pointed in the morning. Without rules, things cannot move. Just meet the Secretary Social Justice, just meet the Chief Minister, just meet anybody who is and tell them why Maharashtra should be lagging behind. If Gujarat can adopt in first 6 months, Maharashtra should adopt in first 6 years at least.
Yes.
So this is the logic. We should, everything, now going step further, just remember, even after the rules, there has to be notifications. There have to be executive orders. For everything moves once there is an executive order by the government of Maharashtra. They have. Without rules also Maharashtra has the executive order, because I am part of a small committee which was handling matters in Mumbai High Court. So I keep getting the material. But rules must be adopted. And Aloka, would you like to add something? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to add also.
Just a moment.
There's a mic. There's a mic. Just switch on. There's a mic.
Until the rules are notified, your act is not implementable. Nothing in the act can be implemented unless the rules are notified by the state government. So सब खड़ा रहेगा वहीं पे वहीं. कुछ RPD का 2016, from 2016 we're almost going to be 10 years now. Nothing will be implementable. You cannot do anything unless the state has the power and the authority. And I'm sorry to say this, but as an elderly senior person, I must say, कि, NGOs by and large work in silos. Need to be sangatit. You need to be collaborative. You need to work together for the greater good. Come out of your classrooms, ABCD सिखाओ, envelopes बनाओ, candles बनाओ, उसके बाहर आना है. साथ में मिलकर लड़ाई करना है. जो भूषण कह रहा है ना, इतना गुजरात में हुआ, it didn't fall from the sky. It happened because of Bhushan and Vakeel and
Many
lots of
people.
NGOs coming together and fighting for it. कुछ आकाश से नहीं गिरा. So Maharashtra at one time was known as the best implementation state. Many years ago when I was a youngster, Maharashtra was at the top. Then Tamil Nadu doing very well, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, all the southern states doing very well, and of course Gujarat. So get together, work together, and fight together.
Now I'll tell them a secret. It's not that Maharashtra law is not implemented. It's being implemented very well. Maharashtra is quite advanced in education, Smagra Shiksha, and many other things. High Court has been proactive. Only thing is, remember that very carefully. Till state governments notifies its own rules, the central government rules are applicable. So Maharashtra rules are applicable. Maharashtra cannot say rules are not applicable. Only thing is, there anything specific about Maharashtra, about their legal system or their state federal system, they have to adopt their own rules. But till then, rules are there. Central rules are notified, and it's very clear mentioned, till the state government notifies its own rules, the central rules will be applicable to that state. That's why Maharashtra, don't get disheartened. Maharashtra is because I am part of the system where I get all the judgments. Maharashtra is quite ahead in many schemes and in implementation. For example, reservation in employment, reservation in education, reservation in development program. Maharashtra is doing very well. A budget for inclusive education around the world, all over the world, on exploitation of people with disabilities by their own family members and things like that. With this, I'm getting the signal. We have to close. But before we close, let's give a big hand of big applause to Aloka ji for coming and saying this. Thank you very much, ma'am.